Hello. Welcome, guys, tonight to Knowledge or Nonsense with Luane Perkins, Lila Price, and Danny Vasquez, subject matter experts within sterilization. Tonight, we're going to talk about reprocessing the N-95 mask, what we should do, what we hope we'll be able to do, what we absolutely should not do. And then later, we're going to talk about some things that may seem like they make sense, but they're not good for cleaning mask at all. And so without further ado, I'm just gonna jump in because N95 has actually become like a household word now since COVID-19. Individuals who knew what it was and people who had never heard of it are now looking for an N95 mask. It's like a hot commodity. And most of them are deemed for single use. And so because of where we are now, we're having to figure out ways to reprocess something that was never to be reprocessed. Like it was a single use utensil, it was a single use mask. And so for those out there in sterile processing world, what are some of the ways that, well, let's just jump in. Somebody weigh in on the mask. And since we have to do what we have to do, what are some ways that can help us with that?
Well, I'll start if that's okay, team. I think when all of the regulations started to come out about these masks, many in our field were frightened. Many in healthcare were extremely frightened because based on the smartest people on the planet, we were told essentially to disinfect and sterilize an item that can be clean. Right. And per our training, if it can't be cleaned, it can't be sterilized. So we were put in a position to autonomously skip steps. And we know in our field that as infection preventionists, skipping steps can lead to harm. So I'll segue with that intro for this conversation. Danny, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think like right now we're all of us within the healthcare field are in uncharted territory. Like you stated, no one's really even had the thought cross their mind to reprocess a N95 mask. So I think we're all what we're learning is forever constantly changing with every day that passes. So there's a lot of research that's coming out day to day. Some of the research that just came out in the beginning were stating that, use soap and water to disinfect and clean out a mask. And then studies show now that soap and water, sandy wipes, alcohol actually reduces the efficiency of the mask. And this all changed within 2 days of just testing. So, some things that we should always keep in mind that we should never do or reprocess our masks that are soiled. Visibly soiled masks should not be reprocessed no matter what the situation is. Right now, the CDC has something out that's called the Crisis Capacity Strategy. It's basically explaining what we can and can't do during a time of crisis when there's low inventory. But something we should never do is if the mask is visibly compromised or soiled, we should not reprocess that mask. And like you stated, Mr. Perkins, we've all either heard or have spoken the phrase, if it can't be clean, it can't be sterilized. But now it seems like it's not so much that we're trying to sterilize these masks, we're more trying to decontaminate the mask using the sterilization process and the autoclaving. So when we're processing these masks through the autoclaves, it's just that we're trying to decontaminate them properly. But yeah, we're trying to do the best we can with what we have.
I agree. I think you guys both made great points. I think what I struggle with as a technician and knowing what we need is just that term single use. You can't really get around a term like that. If it says single use, we are now in a position where we are going against the grade and what we are used to and what we've been told and what we practiced for so long. So I struggle with that theory of, fanning out. But I do know, I've done my research, like most institutions, and, there were papers and different studies that go back to 2016 where they started researching how they can reprocess N95s in particular. What I fear most is just that there's not a lot of information to tell us about the risk of this prolonged exposure to these to hydrogen peroxide and things like that to people touching your skin, breathing it in, the residue that's left on it. So I'm skeptical of the whole process, but I understand the need and I understand the value, because if I'm stuck to the point where I don't have anything, I'd rather use that N-95 that's been reprocessed to at least be able to combat against what I know I can't see. And that's what we're fighting against.
True. And to that point, Lila, it's also very, very vital that we go back to our training, because in sterile processing, we're taught the definition of clean is visibly soiled. Visibly soiled. So although we're fighting an invisible monster, we can see if a mask has lipstick, if it's soiled by bioburden. So our technicians who are in the field reprocessing these items need to be conscious that if it's dirty, visibly dirty, it should not be reprocessed by any means.
And something you touched on, Ms. Price, was the whole concept of how comfortable we are reprocessing. It's like us being in this field for so long, we know what this and those, and then you see the CDC coming out with these recommendations that it's okay to wear a bandana as a mask, and it's just you gotta have to take a step back and really is how comfortable do you feel doing this? It's hard. Like, we're in trying times, and at this point, I feel like we just have to do with what we were trained to do, and I think we're at advantage because of that, because our standard or universal precautions give us that knowledge that we can visualize and basically see what problems we might face in the future. So hopefully that will keep us all safe and healthy in the long run.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
And the silver lining here is that the good news is that we know we are able to kill this particular strand of COVID using the low temp sterilization, hydrogen peroxide conversion.
Yeah.
So again, we got to follow the science. Those who are in the field that know, we got to make sure the less experienced technicians users of sterile processing are being informed to perform these tasks correctly. This is not the time to be guessing if you're doing it right. Not the time to putting the ill experience working the sterilizer. We still have to make sure all of those other parameters and checkpoints are still in place. And last night showed about cross-contamination of these masks, right? Or in our field. So we have to do our due diligence across the board to make sure we're reinforcing the science as we understand it.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think that another thing is just to be cautious of where we get these sources from. I know that the institution I work in, they spend a lot of heavy time, especially our supply chain people, realizing that we need to investigate some of these places that are, distributing and selling N95s. There's a lot of counterfeits on the market, the K95, KN95. So just be cautious. Know that everything that glitters isn't gold is the expression. So be cautious in your environment. Know that you have to be fit tested for N95s and that there's a whole process for that. So if you haven't gotten that in your facility, be cautious about anything someone gives you as an item, and also be aware that with those parameters, being cautious of how you're documenting it. You both spoke eloquently about, looking at what's clean soil, but also the integrity of the mask itself, ensuring that it still has the elastic in place and that the fit band on the rim of the nose and things like that are still intact, that metal doesn't start to decompose and change while it's going through these low temp cycles. So utilizing your skills as technicians and making sure that you're now responsible for another device that needs to be reprocessed, and we have to treat it just as we would treat a drill or a hemostat. Like, give it that same level of courtesy and that same level of functionality and that same level of caring, because this is going to be used for someone to protect them against something, again, like they can't see it. They don't even know it's coming.
That's right. That's right. And back to the macro level within the hospital, in times of emergency, we should be establishing a contingency operation. The next epidemic or pandemic. There's plenty of hospitals that have already revised protocols and operating procedures to adopt and endorse some contingency plans. We have to protect the frontline workers and those that support the frontline workers, first and foremost. A lot of interesting articles have been coming across the news wave today. I don't know if you saw one about there was an MIT scientist who did a study. She's been doing a study for several years about how far, when a human sneezes, how far the expulsion from that sneeze can travel. Now, right now, we're told social distancing is 6 feet. Someone sneezes, according to this study from MIT, can travel up to 20 feet or more.
Right.
That's amazing. And what makes it really interesting is that this particular study was documented using high-speed cameras and light, so you can actually see the travel of droplets. So really, really amazing. We'll post that link tonight if you want to catch up on that. Really amazing.
Yeah, and we'll post up some other links also for some quick fact sheets of reprocessing N-95 for anybody who has questions out there. But also to piggyback on what you said, Mr. Perkins, about the aerosol, that's why they're also questioning and putting out warnings about people that are running and jogging currently without masks, because now that you're running outside without the mask, you're running into these aerosol streams that could be in the air, like you said, for a few minutes. And even though the person's not there anymore, you have no idea what of the stream that you're passing by. So that's why the mandatory wearing of masks that are being implemented in New York City and stuff like that is something that should be, highly considered, not just here but everywhere. But yeah.
Very, very, very interesting. I know Sharon is having some technical problems, so we'll keep track of time and manage as appropriate. It's important for us to stay connected within our industry and to be able to distinguish that which is actual evidence-based science and knowledge versus that which is just myth or fiction. We have so many brand new, we call them green technicians in our field that rely on senior staff members for guidance. So reach out to your coworkers within the hospital, within different departments, and share the information. You have to pass it on. Every hospital, unfortunately, is not going to have a Lala Price or a Danny Vasquez. We've been getting calls from across the country from folks who may be an infection control nurse, and he or she, although they're very smart within their lane, they haven't had the experience or the training to manage a crisis like this once it comes to the sterilizing of a single-use item. I think what I found telling in this whole ordeal, when we needed an IFU, right, and it says single-use, the first thing we default to is what? we call a vendor.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. We tell them that's their problem.
We call a vendor, and some of our vendor partners I understand, they were caught off guard, and they did their very best to get us what they could. Others dragged their feet some, So, like you said yesterday, Lila, it's important that we look who and how folks responded in time of crisis. So when things are normalized again, we know how to mature that relationship. It's really, really important.
And to, again, piggyback what you said, just to plug in, right now, CS Assist is doing completely complimentary consulting. So if anyone out there that has any questions or concerns during this time, please feel free to reach out to us. We will answer. We're being flooded with emails, but we're trying to get to it as soon as we get them. We'll answer any questions, give our suggestions and opinions. Something that Ms. Price said was that, even though the CDC is recommending, doing the hydrogen peroxide sterilization stuff, there's stuff that us as professionals and experts in this have our own opinions. I personally am leaning more toward dry heat and steam sterilization because it doesn't deal with those chemicals. It's something that dries up, and if you have a wet pack or something. Concerning with these vapors and stuff, even though the CDC and other agencies are suggesting that it's valid to do so, it's still something that I would feel more comfortable doing it just through steam or dry heat, because we don't know the long-term effects with the hydrogen peroxide or any other chemicals that we use to sterilize. Excuse me. to sterilize now.
It's true. Very, very true. Very true.
And I have I'll share some information also about just what the so far approved methods and updates are. I got this from a webinar I did earlier today. And at the moment, Steris, the VPro Max non-lumen cycle is the only one to have that EUA issued from the FDA and that approval. So it's important to know that everything else is kind of just subsequently not really validated yet. So just be cautious about whatever process you do choose to use in your institution, and know the risks that are involved in doing something different.
Okay, well, that's our time today, team. So Danny, Lila, thanks for jumping on.
Thank you.
It's been really, really helpful. We're getting a lot of comments from across the nation, folks who did not have a platform to ask the same questions that you are answering. So please keep up the good work. Thank you for your contribution to the sterile processing community, and look forward to seeing you both very soon.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.